And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge, back once again with another instalment of my unpopular ongoing segment, Valiant till the last. Another gloomy day here in the UK, plus I have a bit of a cold, so apologies if I sound a little bit nasal. I do have a blocked nose. Don't worry, it's nothing serious. I had coronavirus a couple of months ago. Definitely isn't that, this is just a cold. Or possibly allergies. Anyway, today we are looking at 4001 AD, the Valiant Deluxe Edition, as I continue to go through the entire Valiant universe, one Deluxe Edition at a time. In last week's episode, we looked at the Rye Deluxe Edition, which is a massive whale, hugely out of print. This one, to be honest, I think this is out of print, but I haven't checked, and I'm not sure. Anyway, let's just jump straight into it. 4001 AD. This is an event book, and the event itself is called 4001 AD, more on that in a second. Standard format, top banner, side banner, main splash image. Spine, 4001 AD, creators no number because it's a one-off event. Back, usual format, blurb, picture, smaller blurb. Let's look at the inside French flaps, usual blurb at the front, creator blurb at the back, and red end pages. Alright, let's get this out and have a look at it raw. We have a silver foil emboss, which is this. And then we have the spine, which is nice and even and will look fine if you're the sort of person that keeps these things raw on your bookshelf. And then a nice clean back. Okay, so this is very much like a direct sequel to the volume we looked at last week, which was Rye. In fact, this could arguably be called Rye Volume 2. There's the creators, deluxe hardcover 4001 AD. Let's have a look at the content, because I think this is going to be really important. So, we have 4001 AD, issue 1. So where it says Flight of the X-OS, ignore that. That's basically, can you see it here? 4001 AD, the Exo Manowar one-shot, which we have already read because it was in one of the previous Exo Manowar hardcovers. Then we've got Rye 13, the event book, issue 2. Then we've got the Bloodshot 4001 AD one-shot. Rye 14. Again, I don't know why this is called Death and the Future. It's just the 4001 AD Shadowman one-shot, which we haven't read before. We have read the Bloodshot one before and the XO one before. We then have Rye 15, Event Book 3. We then have, it's called A Girl and Her Gun, but again, this is another one-shot. It's 4001 AD War Mother as a one-shot. Oh, there we are. Then we have Rye 16. Event book 4, and then some random prologue thing from a free comic book day special. So the reason this is interesting to look at is because this contains the next 4 issues of Rye, issues 13 to 16, which is available as a separate trade paperback. It also has the event book 4001 AD, which is also available as a separate trade paperback, and then it has the 4 one-shots that are just kind of related to the wider universe. 2 of those you've read before, Manowar and Bloodshot. We hadn't read Shadowman before, but I've no doubt it's collected in one of my Shadowman hardcovers. And we hadn't come across War Mother before, and we'll talk more about that right at the end of the video. So, this is how it's collected here in this book. If you read it in trade paperbacks, I don't know how readable it would be if you read just the 4 Rye issues and then later on the 4 4001 AD issues, or vice versa. I don't know quite how that would work, because reading this, it worked really well as an interlaced story, even with the one-shots. Or at least with the first one-shot, the other one-shot's less important. But anyway, there's the contents if you're trying to put this together yourself for your own reading. And if you haven't got the deluxe edition, obviously. So let's look into it. No messing around, they just have all the issues there. You can see all the covers. Nice and straightforward. Great artwork, great writing, continues directly on from the Rye event. The Rye series that we saw previously, and it's overall a good read. This is the first issue, kind of flashing back to this rather, and then you have the Exo Manowar one shot. Now, I read this several months ago now, but I will say that whilst it works as a sort of standalone random one shot issue in the Exo Manowar hardcovers, here it totally makes more sense and actually fleshes out a huge amount more of what's going on. I also thought it was a bit odd reading this issue. Then it ends with this thing, long live the king. These kids climbing over this wreck of this massive mecha. Whereas actually, when you're actually reading the 4001 volume, you realise what that massive mecha is, and you realise who the kids are, and it just makes a huge amount more sense. As I said in last week's video, Rai was really interesting and really good, and it works both as a standalone, but also it has so much rich narrative depth and Easter eggs and retrospectives and stuff that relate to previous stories in the Valiant universe. You don't need to read those to understand this, but I think the more you understand it, or the more you know about that, the richer this is, and the more you can get from this. So, for example, in this, there is the robot from Imperium. If you read Imperium, which by the way still stands as by far the greatest Valiant story I've ever read, the robot from Imperium, which is Snow Light Mountain or Snow on the Mountain or something, he turns up in this, but they don't mention who it is. He's only in the background as a random panel, and it's like, okay, that's really cool. Also, they have a new version of the Hardcore, which is from the Bloodshot comics, but they call the War Core. But again, it's a passing reference, kind of an Easter egg. So anyway, the story continues. Then we have the 4001 AD Bloodshot one-shot. Unlike the Exo Manowar one, this one really just kind of exists as a standalone. It's fine, it's okay, but it really has no bearing on the wider story whatsoever. Then we get back into the usual event issues. It's quite clever because the event issues not only are set in 4001, but also tend to be set quite a lot in like the mid 3000s, so year 3500 or something. Cool story, clever stuff going on in it. The Shadow Man one shot, this utterly negligible. If you don't get to read it, don't worry about it, because it doesn't appear to have a wider bearing on the story as far as I am aware. Having said that, I haven't read any of the Shadow Man comics I have yet, so I suspect had I read those first, this would have much more resonance with me, and I'd probably find it much cleverer and lots of Easter eggs and so on. But again, as someone going in it completely naive to this, it was really interesting and it was a good story. Again, the story continues here with 4001. Yeah, it's sort of classic Matt Kint. It's clever, it's cerebral, it's got decent action in it, sort of lots of bouncing around through time, some decent characterization. It's good, basically. Here we are. I think, yeah, this is like this is the War Core, as I was saying. And this is the robot dude from Imperium, and I was really excited to see him. This is Rai just being a badass. Rai and Bloodshot are similar but distinct, as you'll see when you read this. This is the last one shot. This is a 4001 AD War Mother. So this is completely new, a completely new line, a completely new series. Something which is unlike any of the existing comics that we've read or are going to read. War Mother is a completely new character who is her. This the chick with the funky tattoos and the awesome hair, right? So she's the War Mother. I'm not going to get into what her powers are or what her role and so on is, but she's very much set in the time of 4001 AD. She's kind of a product of the weird Mad Max apocalyptic wasteland that's on Earth at the moment. And she's a total badass. And she's got this really cool gun that's kind of sentient. She reminds me a little bit of Rogue Trooper from 2000 AD, if you've ever read 2000 AD comics. But maybe that's just me. Anyway, so it's a really cool one-shot issue. It's a one and done. You don't need to read anything else to understand what's going on in this, and you don't need to follow it up with anything else. But we'll talk about that a bit more right at the end of the video. So there we are, the beginning, ellipsis. Anyway, so then we've got some more Rai issues. Loving these colours and these covers, by the way. Just so good, so stylized, and it's really nice to see them really committing to that stylized thing. More issues here. And it kind of brings everything to full circle. So the very inciting event of Rai issue 1, which was in the hardcover we saw last time, was a very particular event. It was him investigating the very first murder that had ever occurred in New Japan. And it even has this scene of him being summoned to investigate the murder. So this brings the whole thing full circle, as it says here at the beginning, back to that point, but it fleshes it in with all this kind of retrospective recontextualization that really kind of adds much more depth and scope to what those events were. So it's very good, very clever. And then this is the last part of the event book. Awesome cover, very different style of the cover for the 4001 covers. But yeah, loads of fun, great artwork, absolutely smashing it, very epic scope to it. And then it kind of ends here in like a Brave New World where you've got snow on the, or some sunlight on snow, whatever his name is. You've got Gilad, the Eternal Warrior. You've got Geomancer. You've got Rai. And then you've got Lula Lee, which is a weird name. I kind of like it, but that's partly because I've read, in the last year, I read about 1,200 Superman comics. And I just kind of natively think, oh yeah, of course there's a character. Of course both the names are going to begin with L because that's how Superman comics work. But actually, it's like, this is Valiant, so I don't know why her name is Lula Lee, but it's fine, it's cool. And then we have this Prelude issue, which is collected at the end. But when you read the Prelude issue and what it's actually about and what it covers, it totally makes sense it's collected here. Okay, that is all the issues in the 4001 AD Deluxe Edition. Gallery stuff is usual kind of gallery features, is what we'd expect. Decent artwork, some slight extras, and some sort of discussion in terms of the script and like how the idea came about and stuff. So yeah, really nice build quality, really good story. Overall, what do I think? This basically is Rye Volume 2. You can't read this unless you read Rye Volume 1. You just wouldn't understand any of the 4001 AD event. And it's a direct sequel because that ended on a cliffhanger. This continually follows it. So I understand that it's called 4001 AD, but really they could have called it Rye 102. Rye Volume 2. But hey, whatever. Overall, what are my thoughts? Really enjoyed it, really liked it. I am going to point out one criticism I have, and the criticism I have is actually of the story. And I understand that I don't want to come across as negative, but obviously these videos aren't sponsored. I've no skin in the game. I've got no invested reason to specifically say that I like things or I don't like things. So I'm just going to be completely honest with you. In my opinion, one of the story contrivances in 4001 AD, and in fact in Rye as a whole, is very lazy and cliched. I'm not going to jump into spoilers, but in a very broad, very slightly spoilerific way. It's a future society, you've got humans, and then the humans have these humanoid-like robots that are their servants. And then, surprise, surprise, they treat the robots really badly, and the robots rise up in a battle for their sort of rights as sentient beings. And there's like a civil war between humans and these human-like android clone robot things, which they call Putatronics in the comic. I'm not saying that's stupid, and obviously civil rights are really important, and a race that is like subjugated and viewed as a lower class than another race is absolutely unacceptable. But like I've seen this a bajillion times in comics. I've seen this so often that I was like, this better be something clever and something good you're doing in this, and it's not. It's just literally it's civil war by the numbers. It's what does it mean to be human by the numbers. It's robots rebelling against their human masters by the numbers. It's kind of a major theme. There are several major themes intertwined in these two volumes, and all the others are really good. That one is done competently, but it's hard to do it badly because it's been done so many times. You can just pick it up off the shelf. It's like it's Civil War story by numbers. Anyway, it was dull as shit. It was just an unnecessary side story, and frankly, it's a little bit disappointing they bothered sticking it in there, to be honest. They could have done something a bit more creative. But that's just my opinion. It was just yet another cliche type story. I haven't seen Westworld, but the reason I haven't seen Westworld is because I just don't have any interest in those kind of stories anymore. It's like they've been told to death and nothing new has been said in that space. Anyway, that is my opinion of 4001 AD. What are we going to be reading next time? Well, there is another Rye hardcover, but we're not going to be looking at that next time. Next time, what I want to do, and please do this if you're following along with me, is, do you know how there's this one-shot here? War Mother, the 4001 AD one-shot. Well, apparently there's a 4-issue miniseries which hasn't been collected as a deluxe edition called War Mother. And it came out after 4001 AD, but before the 2019 Rye series. So it's basically between this and the next hardcover we're going to be looking at. So as a result, for next week, that's what your homework is. We're going to be reading those 4 issues of War Mother. I don't know if they're in a trade paperback or whatever. I've got them as singles from the comic shop that I get these things from. So I'm going to have a read of those, and we'll see whether or not they're like some incredible missing piece to the jigsaw puzzle or what. So yeah, thanks for watching along, guys. And as always, stay classy.
All right, thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at I am Thomas Judge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.